Hello everyone, welcome back for another book review. So today we are talking about this book. So this is Feast of the Morrighan, a grimoire for the Dark Lady of the Emerald Isle by Christopher Penczak. So I've had this book for years. I initially had actually done a review of this back when I first read it in like 2015 or so, and I kind of have the same thoughts all these years later. So this book is very heavy on mythology, and a lot of times people want that. They want to have the myths and they want to discuss them, and that's fine if that's something that interests you. But I feel like when we're going into books like that, if you're going to be talking about the myths, you might want to include like just a brief of what you're talking about. Because this book, as with many other books, the one I currently was like comparing it with was the Odin book that I had reviewed not too long ago. Well, it's been a while, like a year or two. But I had reviewed that book, and I had talked about how it was like, I feel like I would get more out of this book if I knew the myths, because they like just vaguely sometimes will somewhat summarize it, but it's really kind of going off of more of a reminder of the myth, not telling you the myth, and that was the case in this book too. Now, as much as I've worked with Morrighan, I've never been big on mythology, and trying to learn her myths is not a very easy feat. In this book in particular, he compares her myths with a lot of other ones. And if you're not familiar with all of that general region of the world's myths, it's gonna be really difficult to keep track of what's coming from where, who are we talking about, what's the relationship, and it's not told in a very interesting way. And it sounds terrible, but it really never captured my interest. It was just, again, summarizing a myth you haven't actually told me about, and when he does kind of do a retelling, it's not in a gripping way. I just was constantly like, what are we talking about? Who? What? Like, you could kind of, because I know some of the myths, piece it together, but a lot of it was like, is this Irish? Is this Welsh? Is this Celtic? Where are these things coming from? And he's comparing the Morrighan to so many different deities, and it kind of got exhausting. And if you're interested in all of the different ways she could be connected to other goddesses and other deities, that's great. This would be a fantastic resource for you. If you're wanting to know her myths, just hers alone, I don't think you're going to get a whole lot out of this book, because he does rely heavily on, and I mean, it's not a very big book, but a lot of this is based off of other myths and connecting her to them. And so a lot of this, again, being myth-based, I didn't care. And I just was often confused and just bored because I don't care. And it's been a thing for a long time. I've never been big on mythology. It was only until I read Neil Gaiman's book, and I actually flipped through it this morning for something else. And again, I can easily get sucked into that, and I think it just comes down to writing styles, not necessarily the information given. You just gotta find an author that can tell the myths in a way that interests you, and then you can tolerate the other versions where it's just more of a retelling, summarizing, quick recaps of it, and kind of diving into what it could mean from other people. But you gotta find that one author, that one story version that's going to pique your interest. Otherwise, you might be really bored like I am. It's not always the case, by any means, but for myself, for years I haven't been interested in mythology, and then I read that book and I'm like, oh, this is what everyone was talking about when they're like talking about why the myths are important. Oh. So the next major thing about this book is that I was really disappointed that, honestly, Penczak was lazy. There's no easier way to put this, and that is he didn't do the full Wheel of the Year. And even when he did the Wheel of the Year, he didn't actually put the Morrighan in the Wheel of the Year, really. It was so much based off of other deities and other stories, and not even her aspects, really. And I was just really disappointed by that part. I was like, you couldn't even be bothered to figure out 8 holidays to do with her, really? Like, it's not that difficult. Beltane could have been for the fairy aspect, Summer Solstice could have been for the water, or it could have been for like the sovereignty over the land. Like, there are so many easy ways that you could have connected for the wheel, and yet one was for the story of Mabon and Morrighan, which I think I might be pronouncing wrong, I don't know. And then another one was for Caradwyn, and the other one was for like Lou, and I'm like, and like the funeral thing with his mom and stuff. It didn't feel like actually a Wheel of the Year for the Morrighan, like emphasized on her, And so I was just really disappointed in that section, honestly. So overall, this book is interesting if you are working with the Morrighan and you want to see different aspects in kind of how she could relate to other deities, if you wanted to kind of have, because Penczak holds the belief that it's the diamond. It's the one, or maybe two. I can't remember if he has the god and goddess separate or if they're part of the one, but he's definitely like, oh, it's the great goddess. Oh, it's the great god. And going through the temple series, that bothers me immensely because I'm a hard polytheist, not a soft polytheist. And so maybe that's why he's fine combining all of these different deities, because I don't really feel like Cara Dwyn and the Morrighan are the same, and let alone diving into the idea of like the Morrighans of Avalon being the same as the Morrighan from Irish myth, like not exactly the same. And so if that stuff is going to bother you, don't pick up this book. If you're cool with that and that's something that really interests you and you'd like to explore it a little bit, this book is a fantastic introduction. It doesn't go into a whole lot of detail. Honestly, I think Stephanie Woodfield does a lot better job covering the Morrighan than Penczak, but it's not a terrible book. I'd still give it like 4 out of 5 stars. It's just acknowledging that like these are things that I didn't really like in this book and might not interest other people. So anyways, that is going to be it for this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on this book in the comments down below. Thank you to my patrons. I will have their names here on the screen. If you would like to support me, it is patreon.com/nightwillowcrafts. And until next time, thank you so much for watching, and blessed be.